Hey there, Skeleton Key here. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you are joining me live, please feel free to pop into the chat and say hi. And and also if you're watching on replay, there's a comment section, so we can chat there too. And I do realize that, this is very short notice. So this last weekend, I was hoping to do this TBR for Mysterious Mayhem. I was hoping to do that this weekend, but instead I was doom scrolling all the Storm Chaser channels and just going through and watching those. And as far as, because I have a lot of family and friends in the Midwest, and the tornadoes this past weekend and still continuing into this week are just like nothing I've seen before. And my dad had a close call, but he came through it okay. And apparently where it touched down a little bit north of him, and apparently it didn't do much damage, because all I've been hearing about is Oklahoma and Nebraska and Iowa. And, not to diminish what's going on there. And I feel so much for everybody affected by those storms, because they're crazy. It's just been it's been terrifying to watch, but I do it anyway. But anyway, that is why I did not do my TBR video over the weekend. And so now I'm getting to it, and I'm going to switch it around a little bit because I do have several books to talk about for my book report. So I will put that at the end, and I will start off with the Mysterious Mayhem TBR and recommendations. So we'll get right into that. But please, if you have recommendations or questions or anything, please put it in the chat or the comments. And we'll see. Because some of these, it's like I know about a lot of these, but then like for zombies, I just Googled, I went on to Hoopla, and I just, put in the word zombie, and it's like, oh my gosh, all this stuff I had no idea existed. And I don't really know a lot about zombie lit, but we will kick off with talking about zombies and vampires and other undead creatures. And even though I say I don't know much about zombie lit, I'm not a big fan of zombie lit, I end up reading a lot of it, maybe because I have friends who read and write zombie lit and all that. But we'll start off with this one. And when I don't have so the prompt is to read a book with an undead character. And you can define characters. Like, does it have to be like an actual live human, or not live human? Does it need to be like a character that's fleshed out and has like goals or whatever, or can it just be part of a horde of creatures? And that's whatever you feel like. Like the zombies in Pride and Prejudice and Zombies are not really what you would call characters, but they're zombies in this. And the reason I'm focusing on zombies is I am doing Zombieathon for Zombie Awareness Month. This is Zombie Awareness Month. And I don't have it down in the description below yet. I will add that, channels I mentioned and stuff. But Kat's Novel Adventures, Kat is running Zombieathon. And so that's the entire month of May. And there's prompts for that. And so, I will link to that announcement video so that you can get in on the zombie fun too. And it's not just books, it's like movies and things like that. And there is a movie for this. I have seen the movie. I have not finished the book. I started the book for a book club, and then we all went and watched the movie. And then the funny thing about the movie, okay, so this is Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, and this has been out long enough. A lot of you are probably familiar with this, but it's Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, but then what's his name? Seth Graham Smith. He went in and added zombies because why not? So this is the first, and there was a series. There's like Sense and Sensibility and Sea Monsters, and oh gosh, I can't remember the others, but they're not all Jane Austen. They're various classic works with added science fiction or fantasy or horror elements. And but anyway, this one, the movie, the really funny thing about the movie is that it's like there were two groups of actors, two categories of actors. It's like half of them were like, yeah, this is a fun, campy zombie movie. And yeah, we're going to camp it up and have fun with this. And the other half of the actors were just playing it straight, like it was just any other costume drama. And and of course, these actors are from both camps are interacting in the same scenes, and it's so much fun to watch. But anyway, I have not finished this, so I might read this, but what I'm probably going to read for my, on my TBR is the second book, the sequel to Dread Nation. And I do not I have a Libro version, audiobook for Deathless Divide, and that's by Justina Ireland. And when I bring up my screen to show you other things, I will I'll pop up a copy of that, or a page of that, so that you can see. I loved Dread Nation, so I highly recommend that one too. And then, okay, so then my next zombie book is, and this is by Daryl Gregory. This is Raising Stony Mayhall. And I read this for Strange Worlds. And this is, oh gosh, it's been so long since I read this. So, okay, so in 1968, after the first zombie outbreak, Wanda Mayhall and her 3 young daughters discover the body of a teenage mother during a snowstorm. Wrapped in the woman's arms is a baby, stone cold, not breathing, and without a pulse. But then his eyes open and look up at Wanda, and he begins to move. The family hides the child, whom they name Stony, rather than turn him over to the authorities that would destroy him. Against all scientific reason, the undead boy begins to grow. For years, his adoptive mother and sisters managed to keep his existence a secret, until one terrifying night when Stony is forced to run and he learns that he is not the only living dead boy left in the world. I really enjoy Daryl Gregory's stuff, and all of it's a little bit different. Pandemonium was the first thing I read by Daryl Gregory, and it's amazing. But this of course has a lot of like social justice stuff in it, and us versus them, and it kind of takes a different look at zombies, but it's a little long. It's, how long is it? So yeah, that's actually a preview. So it's about 400 pages, so a little bit long for a readathon, but hey, you've got all month. So, well, most of the month, considering today is May 2nd. But yeah, I do recommend Raising Stony Mayhall. And let's see. Okay, that's not zombie. This, I guess, yeah, she's a zombie, I guess. This is Hex by Thomas Olde-Hoyvelt. And again, it's another like, full-length novel. So, but this is the scariest thing I have ever read. Um, and I have met him and he came to Fort Collins and he did a presentation at a signing at Old Firehouse, and it was mostly our book club. And so it was a really nice chat. We had a great time. And one thing you do need to know about this, especially if you read, I guess it was originally published in Dutch, but if you have read the original, it is set in, I believe it's set in the Netherlands. I haven't read it. I've only read this one, which is set in upstate New York. And people are people who have read both are like, wait, what? You translated it into English and you just moved the translator moved. No, he and the translator worked very closely together. His English is fine. He if it was just a translation, he probably didn't need, he might have needed help with a few phrases or something, but I'm sure he would have done fine. But he was familiar with this part of New York, and he, uh, yeah, he just, yeah, it's a really creepy kind of place, and he wanted to set the book there. So he took this concept and main storyline and moved it to upstate New York. And the story is about, I guess she's a zombie witch. But there's this witch, this woman who was, I guess they tried to execute her, and maybe they did succeed in executing her, but it didn't take. And, back in, I forget what year, but now she just wanders around the town and she just kind of appears here and there. And so she's sort of a cross between a ghost and a zombie. Um, so it's set in the modern day, at which point, um, she's kind of become a little bit of a town joke. But the real kicker is that anyone who lives in the town can't leave the town. So the residents, they go to great lengths, and that's what it opens with is, there's, maybe it's not the exact opening scene, but, um, yeah, there's like almost a Mission Impossible kind of feel to this scene where a team of townspeople are basically trying to work to coordinate, not, keeping people from looking at real estate in the town, and dealing with like festival goers, because they do have like a fall festival thing, and making sure that the festival goers don't encounter her, and they don't, that nobody learns of her existence, and outsiders don't know about her. And yeah, but where things really start to go pear-shaped is when some kids with camera phones, yeah, they decide to post some video of her on the internet. And yeah, it's this is, I mean, it starts off kind of humorous, but then it gets really, really dark, and it stays dark. Uh, like I said, this is the scariest thing I have ever read. So if you are looking for something truly terrifying and that does not have a happy ending, this is it. Okay, and this is another one that isn't a, well, I mean, it's a zombie book. This is Blood Red. This is the first in the trilogy by Jason Bofberg, and he's a local author, and so this is set in Fort Collins, so it's a little weird seeing a zombie apocalypse set in the town you live in, and it's a little strange. But Jason says that it's not really a zombie book. I mean, they seem pretty zombie-like. This zombie apocalypse that happens, and it's all right. My personal theory, my pet theory, and I have not read the last book in the trilogy. I have not finished the trilogy, so I honestly do not know if I'm spoiling this or not. I'm probably not. But my pet theory is that they are radioactive pine beetles from outer space. That's my theory, and I'm sticking to it. But yeah, if you want to see Fort Collins pretty much destroyed, that's it. Okay, so this is... Okay, so this is Lesbian Necromancers Explore a Haunted Gothic Palace in Space. Decadent nobles vie to serve the Deathless Emperor. Skeletons! That's a blurb from Charlie Strauss. This is Gideon the Ninth. The first in, I think it's going to be a quartet? Or a quintet? I'm not sure how many books are planned. This I have not read farther in the series. I've read this once and was completely lost. So then I listened to the audiobook and understood a good deal of it then. But it's, yeah, lesbian necromancers in outer space. So there's undead, and skeletons, animated skeletons. So that fits the brief. Okay, so I've got two more that aren't really zombies. Undead really covers a lot of ground. If you just, if you go to Wikipedia, there's a Wikipedia page for undead, and it lists, I don't know, so many, every culture has its own kind of undead creature, and every mythology and everything. It's just, there's so much. But Carrie Vaughn, she's best known for the Kitty the Werewolf series, but this is paranormal bromance. And this is a real short little novella, and this is a vampire story. So, and it's a lot of fun. It's part of a series. I mean, and her series kind of intertwine. You don't really, I read this without reading the novellas that come before it, or the novel. Yeah, there are works that feature some of these characters, but I've read some of her Kitty books, and I've read some of her other like short stories. Yeah, they share characters and settings, and she's got one set in Fort Collins, Horsetooth Reservoir, but yeah. So if you want a really quick vampire read, there you go. And then of course Neil Gaiman. Love me some Neil Gaiman. This is the Graveyard Book, and yeah, this is YA or middle grade. I don't know which. I'm not good at making the distinction at times. I think might be actually considered middle grade. This is really episodic, but it is so much fun. And it does have an overarching plot. There are ghouls in this, and ghosts, and it's about a boy who escapes a very well, he escapes, and he's a living boy. He's not a ghost, but he escapes this scenario where somebody's trying to murder him, and he escapes that and ends up living in the graveyard, and the ghosts in the graveyard decide to, claim him as their own, and they raise him, and it's fun. There is a lot of bad stuff that happens here and there, not just at the beginning, but I really enjoyed that one. Okay, so that was the skeleton prompt. Now, the key prompt is to read a book with a map. And so what I'm going to read, it's only taken me forever. I started it a while back, and I was kind of liking it. I think maybe Ursula K. Le Guin is just really not the author for me, but I'm going to keep trying. And this is A Wizard of Earthsea. And this is a really old copy. I got it at a thrift store I think when I was living in Wisconsin. And let's see, there is a map. So yeah, this has a map. So it doesn't have to be a map like this or in this other book that I'm going to recommend. Okay, where can I put things that they're not going to topple over? But this is A Natural History of Dragons by Marie Brennan. The first in this series. Lady Trent is the Jane Goodall of Dragonkind. And that's a quote from Jim C. Hines, the author of Libriomancer. And this has multiple maps. But it's sort of like a fantasy version of Europe, and she's in sort of a fantasy Victorian England, or maybe even, I think Victorian. But she's a naturalist and a widow, and and there's all sorts of really neat illustrations. So yeah, here's another map, and I just saw a dragon. Where'd it go? So this is a sparkling actual size. This was a really neat. It's a mystery, and she's a naturalist, and she wants to go to. I'm thinking it's sort of supposed to be equivalent to Romania, and so she wants to go write a natural history of dragons, and so she does, but things happen, and she is a widow, and so there's stuff surrounding that, and because she's a widow and of noble means, she has a lot more freedom than if she had never married, and so that's a really interesting thing that is explored, and there's just so much cool stuff in here. So I do highly recommend that, A Natural History of Dragons. And like I mentioned before, a lot of mysteries have maps of, so you can see relationships, and not just maps, diagrams count as well. So like in a country house murder mystery, you might have a diagram of which hallways connect to which hallways and whose rooms are next to each other and which rooms have connecting doorways and things like that. So I think I'm wanting to say the Mysterious Affair of Styles, at least the edition I read. And you'll see it a lot more in older editions. Those were really a big thing, especially with like the pocket books and like mid-century, 20th century. And a lot of the like noir stuff seemed to have a lot of diagrams and stuff too. But that was a big mid-century thing with mysteries, is to have a map or a diagram or something like that. And I talked about science fiction and fantasy, fantasy, especially if they've got lands that aren't real, as opposed to urban fantasy. And I'll get to, is that urban? I don't know. Anyway, but they'll have maps so that another one that comes to mind, I don't exactly recommend this one, but a lot of people really like it, is The Traitor Baru Cormorant by I can't remember the author's name on that. I can try to look it up later here. But it does have a map. I remember in book club, I read it for a book club, and I remember a bunch of us commenting that, wow, if you're going to have a map, you should maybe put a little more effort into the map. We didn't think it was a very good map, but we had a lot of problems with the story too, but overall, just generally speaking. But a lot of people absolutely love those books. So yeah, that's The Traitor Baru Cormorant. I don't know if it's an actual series or just a duology. But even though our book club was kind of critical, you may really enjoy that. And it does have a map. There are a lot of, and yeah, I talked about nonfiction. I should have pulled it out. I've got some, I read a lot of nonfiction, like historical stuff about like the Missouri River Valley or the Lewis and Clark expedition, and those have maps in them. So whatever historical period you're interested in, I'm sure you can find a book with a map. And I've got one book that's actually, it's a guide, and I can't find it, but it's a guidebook for a historical site, where it was important in a war. And so, of course, it has all of the battle maps and everything in there. And so, but anyway, I could just kind of prattle on forever about that. But let's move on to the next prompt. So we've had skeleton, we've had key, so now mysterious. And this is going to be people with pseudonyms or aliases over there. So I've got a couple. So what I am going to be reading, and I've read parts of this because this was for a play that was being produced here. And so I was helping one of the actors run their lines, and that's how I came across this. This is He Dead? And this is an stage adaptation of a comedy by Mark Twain. And I think it wasn't found until like sometime in the 20th century. But anyway, the little blurb tells you right away what's up with the assumed name. And this is, it says, Jean-François Millet, a young painter of genius, is in love with Marie Leroux, but in debt to a villainous picture dealer, Bastien André. André forecloses on Millet, threatening debtor's prison unless Marie marries him. Millet realizes that the only way he can pay his debts and keep Marie from marrying André is to die, as it is only dead painters who achieve fame and fortune. Millet fakes his death and prospers, all while passing himself off as his own sister, the widow Thieu. Now a rich widow, he must find a way to get out of a dress, return to life, and marry Marie. So it's, a lot of slapstick comedy, a lot of it's a farce, and it's based on a Twain story, and so David Ives then adapted it for the stage. So this is a real quick read, but I have never actually read through the whole thing. I've only read certain scenes, and I've seen the play when they produced it, but it's and I'm a Missouri girl, and so Twain, yeah. And then but a slightly different take on the alias thing, and this is also another quick read. This is a graphic novel, The Guild by Felicia Day and Jim Rugg. And so The Guild, in case you haven't watched the web series, is about it's sort of a World of Warcraft kind of MM, what was it, MMORPG, online RPG. Yeah, and it kind of puts me in mind of, I played Ultima Online back when it was actually pretty cool, and then before it descended into just PKs running around killing everybody, and there was, it took all the fun out of it, so I quit playing. But it's sort of like that. I've never played World of Warcraft, just Ultima, but it's that kind of thing, a fantasy adventure game. And so the characters who end up meeting up in real life, and everything just kind of goes awry when that happens, because these are all very, very different people, and they're all very strange in their own ways. But so here's our main character, but then this is her alter ego in the game. So there's like so this shows, so they're a guild, and so that's they have in-game personas. And so that's another take on the character using an alias, because all of those characters use aliases. But also, mysteries are a lot of mysteries. And I almost didn't set a TBR for myself until I said, I was like, I do need to read Is He Dead? And that definitely has an alias in it. But so many mysteries hinge on some person, or at least a red herring in the mystery hinges on somebody using an alias of some sort, or an AKA, or a pen name. Even you could read a book about where the main character is an author who uses a pen name, and that plays into the story. Or and it doesn't have to be a mystery per se, and it doesn't even really, I guess, have to be a story element so much as this character, or the main character even, just a character who is an author who uses a pen name. So a lot of books, whether they're mysteries or not, have something like that. All right. Trying to think if there was anything else I was going to mention for this. It's just there's so many opportunities, and some of them you don't know until you've read it. And for myself, I was just like, well, I'm going to read enough mysteries this month that surely I'll hit one, but don't really need to resort to that or count on that. So then our final prompt, and all of these prompts are optional. You don't have to do prompts, just read a mystery or something mysterious or chaotic, and that counts. So the last one is a trickster character. Read a book with a trickster character or an agent provocateur character, or and sometimes sometimes it's not really, they don't have a specific goal or anything. Sometimes there are characters who just like to stir shit up. So yeah, a shit stirrer character. We talked a lot about Loki, and so this is what I'm recommending. This is Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse. And there is a very clear trickster character. And it's like urban fantasy, but it's not urban, but it's still, it feels like urban fantasy. So if you're an urban fantasy reader and you're looking for something a little bit different, this is a post-apocalyptic story featuring a monster hunter. Maggie Hosky is a Dinata monster hunter, supernaturally gifted killer. There is a lot of violence in this. It's very violent. It gets pretty dark, and it's kind of depressing in a lot of places, but it's also a ton of fun. And and I don't know if I'd call it romance. I don't know. But anyway, I do highly recommend that. And then, where'd it go? What was I gonna? Okay, my trickster read. I had something else picked out, but I also am planning to, because I looked, I searched, and Wikipedia has so many. I mean, for everything, and so I think I'm going to seek out something that I'm not familiar with. Oh, like Anansi Boys, that counts. That's another recommendation I have, by Neil Gaiman. Anansi is very much a trickster character. And I do still need to read American Gods, and I'm told that Anansi Boys is sort of a loose sequel or sort of a follow-up to American Gods. So I could probably read American Gods for this, but I don't know that for sure. But I'm thinking about just looking up finding a short story featuring a trickster character that I'm not familiar with at this point. I can probably find something on Hoopla that will count for that. And so I'm kind of excited about finding something completely new to me, because until I read Anansi Boys, I'd never heard of Anansi. And I know there are children's books. I read, what was it, a couple years ago, I think, I picked up a friend's little picture book of the Anansi story, and I'm like, yeah, okay. By the way, if you're arachnophobic like I am, just be warned, Anansi is a spider god kind of creature. And yeah. Of course, there's the Loki and all the Marvel universe that goes along with that. And then, let's see, I do have some other recommendations on the zombie front. For Zombie-thon, I do want to play some, do some, because some of the prompts are not necessarily reading prompts. One of them you could like play a game, so I think the zombie dice are going to have to come out. Play some zombie dice. I don't know if pandemic counts. I mean, it's a pandemic, but well, I don't know. Do we have zombies? I think it maybe is too early to tell with COVID. There may yet be zombies. But Pandemic it's a board game, so yeah, I might play some Pandemic. It's a little bit of a stretch, but yeah. And also to watch movies and TV shows. I tried watching The Walking Dead. Really liked it, but it did serious. That when it first came out, the TV show The Walking Dead, I watched several episodes, but then I realized, no, it was giving me nightmares. Seriously giving me nightmares, and I had to quit watching it. So, I have watched Shaun of the Dead already, and that was entertaining. Um, I think I am gonna, because I read Warm Bodies, and yeah, I might as well go ahead and pull it. Oh, I could watch this movie. Let me pull up my screen. So this is so first I'll talk The Girl with All the Gifts. And there has been a movie made, and I have not watched that movie. So I could watch the movie of The Girl with All the Gifts, which is a zombie book. Yeah, it's got almost 4 stars on Goodreads. It was a nominee for Best Horror in 2014. And yeah, it's about this. The main character is this girl and they call them hungries, and she's a hungry, and she goes to school with the other hungries in this sort of research camp, research facility kind of place that the government has, and it's in England. And after the zombie apocalypse, and they're trying to, and she's a genius, and her teacher is really sad because she knows that they're gonna have to kill all these kids eventually. But yeah, there's a classroom full of these little hungries, and they're all about the same age. But she's a genius, and she knows all this stuff about chemistry, and she just really wows everybody. But then, of course, things happen, and the situation changes, and suddenly there are problems. And I don't want to spoil it because it's really a great story. So I do recommend that. The book, I have not watched the movie yet, so maybe I'll watch the movie for Zombie-thon. And let's see the other one. Oh, I was going to show you Dread Nation. So yeah, this is by Justina Ireland. And this was a Goodreads Choice Award nominee for Best Young Adult Fantasy and Science Fiction in 2018. It's YA, but it's such a great story. It's so well written. And the story of friendship that comes through later, so Jane McKean is our main character, and she's the Civil War era setting, and the Civil War has basically been put on hold so that everyone can fight the zombies instead of each other. But that doesn't mean the tensions aren't there, and the racism, and the all the stuff that the slavery concepts and everything that led to the Civil War. So that the Civil War it's almost like kind of the Civil War that we still have going on today. I don't know, say still already, I don't know, but I feel like we're in sort of a low-key Civil War right now with everything that's going on with immigration and everything. And the whole, all the campus protests now, and it's we are a very divided nation. So even though technically the Civil War here in the 1860s is on hold, uh, yeah, it's still kind of the undercurrents are still rumbling there, but they're still fighting they have to fight the zombies, and you find out more about the whole zombie thing, and, um but yeah, Jane McKean is, because of the color of her skin, she is sent to, a school to learn. It's a finishing school, but the main point of the finishing school is to learn how to be a zombie slayer. And there's a lot to this story, so I won't go into it, but there's a lot of adventure, there's a lot of zombie killing, there's a lot of danger, but it's also a very heartwarming story of friendship and a little bit of romance, maybe. But not with the zombies, which is a different book. But anyway, my zombie read is going to be Deathless Divide, which is the second book in this series. There's not a quick link to it. But anyway, I'll just show it to you. There we go. So yeah, Deathless Divide, Justina Ireland. And so yeah, these two girls are still together and going on more adventures, but if you want a true zombie romance, I read this for the Folger Shakespeare Libraries book club. This is Warm Bodies by Isaac Marion, and I think the movie is on Netflix, so maybe I will watch the movie for Zombie-thon. But this is it's a zombie retelling of Romeo and Juliet. And if you're familiar with Romeo and Juliet, which I think every high schooler in America is familiar with Romeo and Juliet, is forced to read this at some point. And does it count as a romance? I don't know. But yeah, so the Juliet character, she is alive, but she meets the R is the Romeo character, and all he remembers is that the R sound at the beginning of his name, so we don't know. But they go out and they raid they attack a bunch of humans and they take them back to their zombie encampment, and he kind of falls for this girl and decides not to eat her brain. And so it is a really interesting story. I had some problems with it but he starts to actually kind of become, his transformation to zombie starts reversing, and he starts actually becoming more human the more he interacts with the Juliet character. And so it's this, yeah, and of course, there are scenes with her family, and they're not happy about it. But one of the big problem I have is that they seem to think that Axe body spray is a good solution to the stench of rotting flesh. And I'm sorry, Axe body spray is not a good solution for anything. And so I had some issues with that. And then there's some other things that are obviously there just to make the Romeo and Juliet parallels work. And I wasn't so sure about those, but it is an interesting little story, and I'm interested in watching the movie. So So yeah, maybe I'll watch the movie for Zombie-thon. Don't know what I'm going to do for the snacks section. I mean, there are a lot of alcoholic drinks for that, but I can't really do alcohol anymore thanks to interactions with medications and but maybe I can figure out a non-alcoholic mocktail, zombie mocktail. I'll see what I can come up with for that. I'd really like to do like meringue, get a brain like mold or something and maybe see if I can make meringues, or jello mold. I don't know. Brains. I don't know what I'll do for that. And so that's that for that. So yeah, in the comments or in the chat, let me know if you're gonna do a zombie-thon or if you're going to do Mysterious Mayhem with me. And we will be doing, did I say it already? I can't remember. And this is another thing that I'm going to have to update in the comments below. But I'm going to be doing like a little sprint thing every Thursday at 2 p.m. I know today it wound up getting pushed out to 3, but I'm aiming it. I was looking at my calendar, and 2 p.m. on Thursdays all month long, I will be doing sort of a sprint productivity or reading and productivity sprint thing, and also kind of going over. I might combine it with my book report. I haven't decided yet. It just kind of depends on how my Mondays and Tuesdays are looking, because they're looking really busy. So I might end up having to combine. But ideally, I'll still do a separate book report. That didn't happen this week at all. But I'll be doing like a separate book report thing on Monday or Tuesday during, for the previous week's report. And that will, of course, lend itself to some discussions of Mysterious Mayhem books and Zombie-thon books. And I'm also doing Asian Readathon, and I do have one book picked out so far for Asian Readathon. Actually, 2. Yeah, I left the other one downstairs. Anyway, but the first one is Shinju by Laura Jo Rowland, and the Asian Readathon, I will put that. I guess I can go ahead and. Well, first, gosh. Yeah, I didn't really prepare for this part of it. I'm just kind of talking off the top of my head. But anyway, let me just show you the East Indian. And I have already started reading that. Oh gosh, it's coming up on 4. Okay, well, I guess I won't show that to you, and I'll just go ahead and stop sharing my screen because I'm not sure what's going on there. But anyway, that's The East Indian by Brenda, and that's Brinda, Charry, Charry. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I have a hard copy library book downstairs, and I've started reading it. It's really interesting, and it's about this East Indian boy who, and I'm not sure exactly where the story is going yet, even though the book club starts in half an hour. I have not finished the book for book club, but I'm reading it for the Folger book club, the Folger Shakespeare Library. They read Shakespeare adjacent books, and this one it does feature a Shakespeare play in the story, so that's the connection there. But the first part of the book club, it's a virtual book club, and it's like 200 and some people. Usually when I log on, there's hundreds of people watching. And so the first part of the book club is a presentation by one of the librarians, or one of they sometimes they bring in a guest speaker, an expert on whatever subject, and they give you all sorts of historical and literary background on the story and how it relates to Shakespeare or Shakespeare's time period. And that part is always super fascinating, even if I can't really participate in the discussion section, because after that presentation, then they split into breakout rooms. And so then you've got basically a small group of people, like 15 people, something like that. It kind of varies as far as, because they have a moderator for each breakout room, and really fascinating discussions. But sometimes I say, okay, I have not finished the book, so I'm just going to lurk and listen. But even if I don't feel comfortable doing that, or I don't want spoilers from the discussion, then watching the first part, the presentation, is always worth it. So, and that is, if you just go to the Folger Shakespeare Library's website, and they've got information there. Upcoming book clubs. So yeah, I do recommend that if you're into Shakespeare at all, or just think that sounds like a fun way to pick books to read, check it out. And it is free. You do have to reserve a ticket, but there's no charge for the ticket. You of course welcome to donate, but they are a nonprofit. So, but anyway, the other book I am definitely reading for Asian Readathon is Shinju, and this is by Laura Jo Rowland, and this is for the debut. Debut author, debut novel. And so this was Laura Jo Rowland's debut novel. And I had this on my shelf for a very long time. And so I will be happy to finally read that. And so let's see, I'm doing Asian Readathon. I think there are several other prompts. I have not really sorted out what exactly I'm reading for that. And then I saw people keep mentioning all these other readathons, and I'm like, oh, I can't do anymore. But then I saw there's a Du Maurier themed readathon. I have not even looked at it yet, but I will probably end up doing it, because Rebecca is my favorite book of all time. I don't pick favorite books lightly, or favorite songs, or favorite anythings. And part of that, if somebody was talking about how that's kind of an autistic thing, is we hate to be feel boxed in to naming a favorite anything. And so I have a hard time, but if you ask me what my favorite book is, I'm always going to say Rebecca. For a while there, I thought, ooh, maybe it's going to be My Cousin Rachel. And I do love My Cousin Rachel. But then I did a reread of Rebecca, and I'm like, nope, it's Rebecca. All-time favorite book. And I kind of hesitate to recommend it to people, because they always come back and they're like, oh, I hate this unnamed narrator. This narrator, they never like the narrator. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe you're not supposed to like the narrator, but I identify with the narrator. So I always feel personally attacked when people say that. Oh gosh. And so my book report, it's coming up on 4:00 here, and I still have not even started my book report. So I'm going to try and get through that just kind of super quick. But yeah, please let me know in the chat or the comments what you're reading for, these readathons or any other readathons. And yeah, tell me what readathons you're doing so that I can feel bad about not doing them. Okay, first a little break. so that my voice does not completely go out on me. Oh, and I get to just try to share my screen again. Let's hope this works. Let's try moving over to that beforehand. All right. So, yeah, I talked about night watching last week. So 2, 3, 4, 5. So I finished 6 books in the last full week of April. And okay, so let's start with in 5 years. Is it okay? I'm gonna try to do this way and see if it was. Oh, it loaded! Yay! Okay, so this is In 5 Years by Rebecca Searle, and I read this for the High Tea Book Club. And oh, I should not talk much about this one yet because, yeah, so this came available before, because I read this for the May High Tea Book Club, which has not happened yet. And the April, so this came in on Libby ahead of, way ahead of time. And I'm like, well, I better read this now. And because I knew, it wasn't to skip the line, but it had been telling me like a 12-week wait or something like that. So I went ahead and put it on hold, and they're like, oh, here it is. Okay, I'm not ready to read it yet. So I went ahead and read it. And as a result, didn't finish April's book club book. But, so all I'm going to say right now is that it is not a rom-com. It may look like a rom-com cover, some of the, some of the hints that it gives in the blurb make it sound a little bit like a rom-com. It's not a rom-com. It's not really comedic at all. I thought it was a pretty, I wouldn't say, well, yeah, it's a depressing, it is kind of a depressing read. But I don't want to tell you what happens to make it a depressing read. But it hinges on a woman who, at the beginning of the book, she's just gotten engaged. She's getting ready to start her dream job, and everything is just perfect. And, in the interview for the dream job, they asked her about her 5-year plan. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And so this nominee for Best Romance 2020, I don't remember. So this was probably written in like 2019, before the pandemic. And so the whole where do you see yourself in 5 years question just really, because I actually started looking for a job, and I interviewed for a few jobs. And at one of the interviews, and this was like in 2022, and one of the interviews, they asked me, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I just looked at him and I'm like, really? We're talking about 5-year plans in this universe? What? But anyway, yeah, and I did not get that job. And it's a good thing I didn't get that job or any of the jobs I've applied for, because I have to spend so much time on medical stuff. But yeah. But she's got this 5-year plan in place, and everything's just going great. But then she has this dream. She falls asleep right after the engagement party, and she has this really vivid dream about, and there's like a the news is on and it has the date at the bottom of the screen, and it's exactly 5 years in the future. And let's just say her life is very different from what she had intended in her 5-year plan. And there's a guy involved, and but she's engaged in her life in the current time period. And oh, and yeah, that's oh wait, now I'm trying to remember, because okay, nominee for Best Romance 2020, which means it was published in 2020. But I thought they made some references to the pandemic, or maybe I'm imagining that, or maybe I'm confusing it with something else. But anyway, in 5 years in the future, in this very vivid dream, and it's so vivid that she ends up going to therapy about it, and she's with somebody else. She's got a different engagement ring on her finger, and yeah, and it's very, very vivid. And so she spends the next 4 years, it's just still, even though she goes to therapy and they're like, I don't know, but she continues on her little 4 or 5 year plan, and everything is just going along straight, just fine. And then she actually encounters the guy from her dream, and it's like, oh, he's real. And yeah, he is real. So yeah, I don't want to say a whole lot else about my feelings and thoughts on the book just yet, but I liked it. I gave it 4 stars. And I think it did help that I went in knowing it was not a rom-com. But so yeah, that will help, especially if you've been misled into thinking, oh, this is a fun rom-com. It's not a fun book. It's good. And some things, I will say that there are some things that are never really actually explained, and I don't know yet how I feel about that. But, so, all right, let's go back here. And then next up was Accused. And this is by M.N. Jolly. And this is the first in the Kansas City Warlock Weekly series. And so this is urban fantasy. And I enjoyed the heck out of this. I'm from that area, and I'm not super familiar with Kansas City, especially not recently. I have been there several times in the last few years, but I have not re-explored Kansas City. But I did recognize a lot of stuff. And so it was kind of cool to see a familiar place with like warlocks and vampires. Oh, so this has a vampire. So this works for the first prompt of Mysterious Mayhem. And so this is the first book. So Levy is our main character, and he is a journalist. Oh, and this is also, I read this for Autism Acceptance Month. There was a Autism Acceptance Readathon. So I read this for that. And to read, I think the prompt was to read a book by an indie autistic author, indie publication. And so this was, I listened to the audiobook. I thought it was really well done. And the author is autistic. The main character, Levy, is autistic. And it wasn't, one thing I really appreciated about it was you could tell he was autistic. He had some stems, and there were certain things that he was kind of a stickler about, shall we say, but there was none of that, haha, let's laugh at the funny autistic person doing funny, silly things kind of. Yeah, there was none of that. And yeah, And I think maybe it helped that this was an indie publication and that maybe there wasn't some big five corporate editor going, oh, we have to have, all these moments where we laugh at your main character for being autistic. And so, yeah, this was great. But he's a journalist. He runs his own newspaper, the Kansas City Warlock Weekly, and I like the cinematic approach. Oh, sorry. There is a lot of jumping around in time. I mean, it takes place over a really short time frame, the action of the story, but it goes back and forth, and it's sort of that in media, is it in media res concept? He's basically being interrogated, and so he keeps there are a lot of flashbacks, but I thought the flashbacks were really effectively used. And but anyway, there's a murder, and he's the prime suspect in the murder. But yeah, but there's also this little cat and mouse game, but you flash back to him trying to investigate the murder and trying to and at some point a vampire is sicked on him, and so he has to deal with the vampire, and yeah, a lot happens. It's great. It's a lot of fun. And I really enjoyed the world building in the Kansas City, a fantastical version of Kansas City. It's great. Okay. And also for autism acceptance readathon, I read Autism in Heels, and I also read this for People April. It counted for that. Excuse me. I don't normally talk this much, and so my voice is giving out. So I've just got a few more things to do. I'll try to zip through these real quick. Autism in Heels, the untold story of a female life on the spectrum. Jennifer O'Toole is actually autistic. I was not familiar with her. Apparently she is kind of a celebrity. She's an actress, and I was not familiar with her at all. There are a lot of mixed reviews about this book. I got a lot out of it, but that might be because I'm an autistic woman and I got a lot of validation. I did have issues with a lot of things, but overall, I got more out of it than I had problems with it. So I rounded it up to 4 stars. I think the main problem with this book is it did not have a well-defined audience in mind, because there were a lot of chapters that I really identified with, and I felt like they were kind of aimed at me and people like me. And yeah, it's okay to, not be, the stereotypical autistic person or even autistic woman. It's okay to be girly, and because we do a lot of times, and I'm not especially girly. I'm a demi girl, but I don't really mind presenting, and sometimes I even enjoy presenting as female. And I get pedicures, and I do need to get my hair shaped a little bit. But yeah, so a lot of that did really speak to me, because we do often get that, well, you don't look autistic. It's like, what does autistic look like? So a lot of it did deal with that, and just kind of, it felt aimed at me and people like me, as far as making us realize, okay, yes, we're not crazy. We're just, underrepresented and misrepresented. in media. Then there were other chapters that I felt, okay, these are the chapters that the neurotypicals need to read to understand why we get bent out of shape when you tell us we don't look autistic, and various things like that. It's like, these are things you neurotypicals need to understand. And so I appreciated that those were there, but they were not aimed at me. And then there were others that were just really, her talking about some specific difficulties that she's encountered in her life. And some of those, I think I have very specific people in my life that I would like to read those chapters, because I think it will give them a deeper understanding of why I am the way I am in some ways. And I'm being kind of vague there, but when you get to the chapters with trigger warnings, with content warnings, yeah, those, it's like, maybe, yeah, you can understand why I'm still broken in some ways. And, things that I probably never will fully recover from, and why I do some things I do and behave some ways I do. And, um, and it's sort of a deeper understanding. And this would be for people who I am close to, but maybe don't talk about some of these topics really in depth, or don't know how to express. And it's like, I could just, hand this book and say, read this chapter or two, and that might, kind of help you understand. This expresses things, I didn't have this exact experience, but kind of, yeah. And that would let you know. And I'm talking too much, my voice is starting to go. So, but yeah, I recommend, I would not give a blanket recommendation for this book, even though I did get a lot out of it. But there are certain parts of it that I would recommend to certain people or types of people. And then, okay, classic Goosebumps, Welcome to the Dead House. This is the first book in the Goosebumps series by R.L. Stine. Not a whole lot to say about this. This is, what it says on the tin. It's middle grade horror. And there were a few elements that I really had a problem with. I don't know if they're problematic for middle graders of the 90s. I don't know. I was, so this first published in 1992. I was a college graduate by that time. I was not reading middle grade horror. So I don't know how I would have felt about that as a middle grader. But yeah, there were certain elements that I really would push back against if I were the editor, but I don't know, maybe middle grade kids in the 90s were a different breed. But it's a couple kids, I think they're like 11 and 12. Their family inherits this house in this weird town, and it's this old weird house, and they're not comfortable with it. And then they start meeting the kids in the area, and everything's weird and spooky. And of course, yeah, it's a bad scene. But it's classic Goosebumps. I think that's really all you need to know about it. And let's see. Let's go. Okay, Murder Road. Oh, maybe sorry I did that. That Murder Road by Simone St. James. Okay, so I listened to this on audiobook. I finished it at about 2 a.m, and I was like, wow, that was a great, fun ride. 5 stars. And then I woke up the next morning and I was like, oh, all this stuff that I've been grumbling about all the time I was listening to it, maybe I should consider that. And then I watched the live show for Literally Dead Book Club, and I was like, yeah, this is a 3-star book. I did still have a lot of fun. And there were a lot of things I loved about it, but there was a lot of really cool and interesting stuff in it, but it did not hang together well as a novel. What I would love to see from this book is it is basically it takes the hitchhiker trope, um, murder, and turns it into a murder mystery, and it's a supernatural hitchhiker thing, and yeah, it doesn't make a lick of sense if you stop and look at it and think about it. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But there's some great characters in this. There's some great use of tropes, some great subversion of tropes. It could have used some more 90s vibes, but I don't know. I was kind of happy with the 90s vibes. They were kind of focused in a few specific areas that made it feel a little campy to me and to some other people. And other people didn't get camp at all from it, and that's fine. But what I would love to see is a TV series called like The Atticus Line. And it's a series, and it's episodic, but it's set in this town with this murder road, and different strange supernatural things are happening. And Rose, I love Rose. She is an amazing character. And I don't want to say much about Rose, but yeah, there should be like a Rose and Robbie prequel. But anyway, I should stop talking about that. Okay, let's see. Will it let me go back? Oh, yay. And so the last thing I'm going to talk about is I Am 17 Brushes with Death by Maggie O'Farrell. This was my first experience reading Maggie O'Farrell. And okay, so I'll say that I loved her writing style. It's very compelling. It's very engaging. It just drew me in and made me want to listen to this whole thing in one whack this was the group read for the People April readathon. And, instead I was like, okay, I'll space it out over 4 weeks. And it's not a very long book. I think it's like 6 hours and something, on audiobook. And, before I started reading it, I was like, ooh, 17 Brushes with Death. And I'm kind of known for cheating death. And I was like, but I haven't had 17. Wow, that's a lot. But I think one of my problems with this book was, this is a memoir, and she's basically telling about her entire life through these 17 vignettes. But some of them, I'm like, that's a brush with death? Really? I don't know if I'd call that a brush with death. Like, one is like her boyfriend cheats on her, so she has to go get tested for HIV. And I'm like, I don't, maybe I'll have to go back and see what time, because it does skip around in time. And a lot of people don't like that. I thought it was interesting, and like I said, I had the audiobook instead of, I think I do want to get a physical copy of this so that I can look at the structure of the time jumps and everything, and see what that structure looks like. But yeah, I was intrigued by it, at least. But I don't know, maybe I'm wondering when, now that I think about it, when that HIV thing was. But maybe it was at the height of, this is super scary, and maybe it was during the Reagan era, and they were really being awful about it. And of course, this was in England, so I don't know. But there was things like that. But then there were other things that, of course, yeah, that was like, her childhood illness was a serious thing. And we don't get to that until later, even though that happened very early in her life, but it's alluded to throughout the book. And I think that actually helped the through line. It was, yeah, sort of an interesting through line of, and then you see how amazing she is that she, one, even survived that, and two, overcame so many um, things that could have gone very, very badly as a result, and some things that did go very, very badly. Yeah, there's uh, yeah, there's childbirth stuff that uh, it should not have gone as badly as it did, and I can really identify it because some of my brushes with death are due to really crappy doctors. Um, and yeah, I feel lucky now that I seem to have a pretty good medical team working with me, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff that yeah, there are some things that I'm just like, well, if you're counting things like that, my count is probably in the triple digits. So, but I really did like this a lot. And yeah, it makes me really want to read some of her fiction. I've never read any of her fiction. So that's something I intend to do. And oh gosh, I've got 4 minutes before Folger. So let me stop sharing. And yeah, so that is my book report for week 17 of 2024. And um, yeah, like I said, leave me comments and tell me what you're reading, if you're going to participate in my readathon, the Mysterious Mayhem readathon, or any of these other readathons, and any recommendations you have for any of those. Any thoughts, comments, yay. And please like, subscribe, and I will talk at you later.